Hello again, this is the second video about the nano devices. Before I go for this slide, let me just tell you that in another strategy for exploiting the nanotechnology and micro devices for the nanomedicine, we can have the substrates on which the cells can be patterned, for example, injecting the hydrogels in which they have the cells. Have a look at these three examples. For example, we can have the nozzle, and the nozzle injects the hydrogels or the droplets, the solution which contain the cells in the pattern that we want. In another strategy, instead of using the nozzle, we can use the cantilever of the AFM to draw the pattern that we want on the substrate. And in the last strategy, which is called the micro contact printing, we can use the molds, and on the molds, by inking the, let's say, the solutions which contain the cells, we can stamp them on the substrate that we have. Well, now let's talk about this slide, which is really important, and it is about measuring the diffusion behavior for different cells. You know that the diffusion happens due to the difference in concentration. For example, if we have a lot of oxygen here and a little bit oxygen here, because because the concentration of the oxygen in this part is higher compared to this part, they will flow due to with respect to the Fick's law, and this is called the diffusion. When we are dealing with these cells, the supply of the nutrients and also the oxygen happens due to the diffusion. If we want to have a quantitative measurement of the amount of nutrients and oxygen which have been diffused for different cells, we can use two different strategies. In the first strategy, we can have the substrates, and on them we can inject the tiny solutions which contain the cells inside them, and we can culture the two-dimensional cells, and after that we put all these layers on each other to form the final three-dimensional artificial matrix. Then we can simply study the behavior of the diffusion which happens between these different layers of cells. In another strategy, we can have these papers. As you see here, we have the papers, and on the papers we can culture the two-dimensional layers of cells, and after that we will stack different layers on each other. Just keep in mind that the papers are permeable, so the diffusion is capable to flow the oxygen and the nutrients through different layers of cells that we have, because the papers are permeable. But the last layer is the impermeable layer, and after exposing these three-dimensional matrices of the cells, for example, into the oxygen and nutrients, and waiting for an appropriate time for the diffusion to take place, we can after that detach all these layers from each other to study separately the concentration profile which has happened within each of them. Okay, now let's jump into these examples that you see. We can use the different nano devices, microfluidic reactors, to study the diffusion behavior which happens for different cells. I'm not going to go through the details of what we have here, because these are not gonna be as important to be included for the exam. But now let's cover the biosensors, okay, in the next video.